Hey everybody, it's been a couple weeks since I've been able to do a video. Moving the family, been on travel. I'm actually in a hotel room right now. Going to be here for next week, so I'll try to do a video or two while I'm out here, for work. Been a crazy day of upsets. Georgia got the bricks beat off them by LSU. That game wasn't even close, not even close to the score looks, because Georgia scored at the very end of the ball game to make it look interesting. But that they were outclassed all game in Death Valley, so they'll drop. I'm gonna guess with LSU is gonna move right back into the top 10 from the 13th spot. It'll be interesting where they put them. They've been pretty decent. LSU's off and on. You don't know which offense is going to show up. Their defense has been pretty stout, though, the entire time. But they look like they got outclassed a week ago by Florida. And Florida doesn't look that great to me. They barely beat Vanderbilt today. They had to come back after a 21-3 deficit. We don't know what the SEC is about. I watched Arkansas get destroyed in two non-conference games. They come into conference, take A&M to overtime, score 31 points on Alabama, and take Auburn to the end of the fourth quarter. So all I can tell you is the SEC looks really different once they hit conference play, just like the Big 12. The Big 12 looked dominant in non-conference play in general. They come into the Big 12 and Oklahoma State gets mollywopped by Texas Tech. They get beat by Kansas State today. They don't look that good to me personally. They could lose the next 5 games. I honestly believe that. I think Kansas could, hurt some feelings. They've got a chance to make a run to make a bowl game this year. And they were arguably the worst team in college football last year. Worst team in college football this year. That's up for debate. But Arkansas, in my opinion, didn't look very. They looked like they were the worst team until they all of a sudden started playing good the last 3 weeks against the SEC. I don't know. Watching the Missouri Tigers, they can't get out of their own way. They keep fumbling, doing bad turnovers. They have bad penalties. They were playing Alabama pretty decently just now, and now it's 20-10 because they had 2 personal fouls in one drive. And if you can't get out of your way against Alabama, Alabama's going to embarrass you. Alabama's good enough where they would do that to anybody. My problem is with Alabama is their rushing defense isn't very strong. They're averaging almost 4 yards a carry. Missouri's averaged like 4.5 yards a carry today. So they've probably played the second easiest schedule in the top 25 next to UCF, who barely squeaked by Memphis today. UCF has the 126th schedule ranking in the top 25, which is horrible, right? And I'm a believer in Central Florida in general, but they didn't look very good against Memphis today. Watching the Alabama-Missouri game right now. Missouri fumbled the ball just now, and they're probably going to get blown out now. You can't make mistakes against Alabama. How do you expect to win, especially at Alabama? This is probably Alabama's biggest test before LSU. They've got Citadel, Louisiana Lafayette. I don't know. They don't play a team that in their non-conference that went to a bowl game last year. People want to give Oklahoma a little flack for their non-conference schedule, but every team they played went to a bowl game last year. Army won 10 games last year. FAU won 11 games last year. UCLA and them getting beat in their bowl game by Kansas State, and they probably wouldn't have got beat if Josh Rosen would have been playing in that game. I'll be honest with you, even being a Big 12 fan. Teams I'm surprised of, LSU has to be the biggest surprise for me. They've played really well in general. I think they're pretty solid. And that's now 27-10 Alabama, so this game's about to get out of hand. Texas surprised me. You know, they've won 6 straight. Their quarterback got hurt today, though, so I don't if Buechele is the quarterback coming in the rest of the year, they'll lose 2 games at least, which is not good for them. West Virginia, you don't know which West Virginia team is going to show up. Will Grier can either be a Heisman contender or he can throw 3 interceptions in the red zone like he did last week against Kansas. You don't know which team's going to show up, and that's going to hurt him in the Heisman race. I think he's out of it anyway. I honestly think it's a 3-headed monster. I think it's Dwayne Haskins, Tua, and Kyler Murray. And Kyler is putting up a lot better stats than Baker did last year right now, and that's saying something. But he might be the reason they lost against Texas last week. Threw a bad interception and had a stupid fumble just trying to make a play. But if Oklahoma could run the table, they fired the defensive coordinator, which I've been calling for his job for 8 years. Everybody knows that. Fire Mike Stoops. And it finally happened. They're going to be healthy, though. Probably the healthiest they've been in 3 or 4 years. You know, they have Jalen Redmond coming back, another 2 defensive players that have been hurt. You know, Kenneth Mann has not been healthy. Neville Gallimore hasn't been healthy. And those 2 guys are the cornerstones of the front line of the defense. So we'll see what happens with Oklahoma. I really think that they can turn this around, and they're going to be in the top 10 this week. At least they should be. I think they were number 9 already, so they should be, you know, they're going to move up just because 3 teams lost, honestly. Georgia has not looked that good to me. They've struggled against Vanderbilt. They got embarrassed by LSU today. They looked bad against some really weak team the other day. I don't even remember who it is. Team didn't belong in the same field, but they did not look good against them. So we'll see what happens with them. I think Georgia might lose another game before it's all said and done. I think Florida's going to lose another game. I think LSU will probably lose to Alabama. You know, I think that game might be a Death Valley, though, so that could change things. And for some reason, LSU plays Alabama really well. But does a 2-loss LSU team get into the playoffs? I don't think so. Just because they lost to 2 non-conference teams. I don't think Auburn's very good, I'll be honest with you. UW obviously showed that, you know, they can buckle pretty fast. They've had some tough games. You know, they've struggled against Arizona State. They struggled against Auburn, who's, like I said, I didn't think was very good, and who's really starting to show that. They struggled today against Oregon, and it was a good game, great game. Playing at Autzen Stadium's really tough. I've been there, really loud stadium. So good on Oregon to win that game. But Oregon lost to Stanford, and they should seriously be undefeated. They're probably the best team in the Pac-12. I don't think USC's that good. Colorado's probably going to beat them tonight, but who knows? Todd Helton might get them to start playing some ball. A lot of college football left. I was talking to somebody today. Hey, look out. You know, there's a lot of game left in the game, being the Memphis Central Florida game. And Central Florida came back, took the lead, ended up pulling it off. A team that I'm not really impressed with is Notre Dame. They've had one really good ball game against Virginia Tech, who was beat by Old Dominion. So you can throw that one out the window. Clemson has not looked very good. They've always struggled with Syracuse for some reason. Even at Clemson, their third-string quarterback looked better than their starter did. And Clemson has talent, but they haven't looked very good for some reason. And I don't know if their quarterback just doesn't look for certain receivers or gets interesting. But Renfro is their guy, and they need to look at him like they look at Cooper Kupp does, the LA Rams. So, Miami's off and on. So it's going to be interesting. My top 4, to be honest with you, I'm still going to put Oklahoma in just because it's a rivalry game. They came back. They looked really good in the fourth quarter. I really think they turn it around. I think they make the playoffs. If Ohio State runs the table, they make the playoffs. They could stumble and lose. I don't think Michigan's very good. They have struggled in almost every week they've played. So I think Ohio State can make it. Okay. I think Oregon's going to stumble somewhere. I think Colorado's going to stumble somewhere. I really don't see Bama losing. So they're my number one for sure. My number two is probably Ohio State. Number three right now is an interesting one just because there's been so many moving bodies and teams, but Clemson's still got to be there for me just because they're undefeated, even though I think they're not super strong. And then number four is Oklahoma. You can call it me being a homer or whatever, but they were my number four last week. The Oklahoma-Texas game, if you've never been there, please go. It is one of the greatest times of your life, probably. And it's going to be so interesting to see what they do. They could play Texas again. They could play, and if they do, if Texas runs the table, then they'll sell out Jerry World, and that'll be a fun game to watch. I see a bunch of teams stumbling, and that's why I still think Oklahoma makes it into the college football playoff. I don't think another team, West Virginia, could make it, right? Maybe they're my number four, and Oklahoma's number five, LSU's number six, just because LSU does not look good against Florida. You don't know which Joe Burrow you're going to get. I'm sorry. I love their defense. I think they're great, but Joe Burrow is just so off and on. He takes risks, and sometimes it pays off, and sometimes it doesn't. But it's going to be a fun year. Next week, we'll do an update, and we'll go from there. I'll probably do it right after games and stuff. I mean, we'll be traveling, so it'll be interesting. But, hoo-yah, and I'll let you know about maybe fantasy later. Peace.